He was 18 then, a yeoman third class, stationed in the personnel office on the second deck, 30 feet from the falling path of the first bomb.
On that particular tragic day, there's one thing that I've always noted, and that's that all along the way, there was someone to help. Shipmates, men I didn't even know, but all along the way, there was someone to lead me, to help me. There were 9 of us in this office on March 19th. And all of a sudden, we heard what sounded like a rumble was the actual bomb hit. I asked Lieutenant Hathaway, how do we get out of here? And he said to me, I don't know, kid. He was sitting at his desk, and those were the last words that he ever spoke. Of the 9 of us in this compartment, only 3 of us lived. I went out through this hatchway, groping because of the dark smoke. There was no way to tell which way we were going. I finally found the hatchway after stepping over several dead bodies. And in groping through the passageway, I touched a tangled mass of steel, at which point the skin on both hands came off. I walked into the marine compartment, the worst possible place that I could have gone. Most of the men were dead. At that point, my lungs became so full of this smoke, my throat was on fire, I couldn't actually see anymore. I fell through an open hatch and broke a rib in doing it. But someone down below deck saw me and pulled me into an airtight compartment. We formed a chain, and in trying to get over the hatchway, I lost the chain. Someone came back for me. They hoisted me up into the warrant officer's mess. And in going through there, I asked one of the men if I could just have a little drink of water. There was a spittoon filled with just about everything, cigarette butts, halves of oranges, and other fruit, just about everything. And this was the water I was given, the best water I've ever tasted in my life. They finally got me to sick bay, and the medics took care of me from that point on. Father O'Callahan gave me the last rites.
Limping to harbor, the Franklin was still a #1 target for the Japanese, eager to finish her off. Twice enemy planes swooped in, one dropping a bomb just off the starboard quarter. Both were shot down. By early afternoon, the major explosions had died down, but the fire still raged. In the steering engine room of the 5th deck aft, between all the burning ship and the cold sea, 5 boys stuck to their posts in order to crank a ton of rudder by hand, the only way left to steer the ship. One of these boys was Holbrook Davis, quartermaster 2nd class.
The 5 of us stood by. There wasn't anything to do for a little while, but we certainly were fully aware of the fantastic explosions and fire above us and almost beside us. As the day wore on, and as it got into the afternoon, middle of the afternoon, we were pretty anxious to get out. We had pretty serious discussions amongst ourselves as to whether we should give it a try, but decided that we better not. Of course, we were in continual communication with the bridge, which probably saved our lives, because we would have been so desperate had we not been. We would have tried to get out.
Lieutenant Robert Wassman, 24, assistant navigator, volunteered to make good a promise by the bridge to rescue the men in steering aft.
Gil Abbott, one of the quartermasters in my division, and I proceeded to find a way to the steering engine room. We tried this first by going aft above the hangar deck by means of the series of catwalks rigged on the starboard side of the ship. We got to the fantail, found at this point Several men had been trapped and lost, but we found one boy, apparently severely wounded. We found a blanket or something that we helped use as a sling. We dragged him forward from the far end of the ship, across the deck, still burning, jagged, torn, wrecked, rubble of airplanes, humanity and inhumanity, everything terrible.
For 5 hours, Bob Wassman searches for a way to steering aft, accompanied first by Quartermaster Abbott, later by Quartermaster Varelick. The search zigzags along smoldering corridors, past burning compartments, around floods from broken mains, through a seaborne cemetery where boys lie motionless in their berths or face down in water. Down in the terrible labyrinth, the searchers push on. There is no witness to their ordeal and their actions but themselves. It would be easy to turn back. They twist and turn through dangers that nearly take their lives. Backtrack from one blind alley and dead end into another, desperately aware that the oxygen in steering aft will soon give out. Finally, 17 hours after the bombs fell, liberation comes to the men in steering aft.
Well, that was a time, certainly we were grateful to see you.
The next job was to get you out of there. So we said, let's grab hands, cover your face, take a deep breath, and follow us.
The bridge learned by midnight that all the living men below had finally been brought out. Now, the captain had to concern himself with the dead.
Our first job was to get all the bodies out of the ship, and this was pretty bad. And there were so many of them, and they were so badly burned and in a horrible condition. And we had no time and no material or to go through really formal or proper burial services. And it was a terrible, terrible experience.
Willie Woods, cook second class, was himself still bearing scars from the kamikaze attack 6 months before.
So our job was to go below deck and find the dead, bring them up, whole bodies and parts, and bury them at sea. And we did that clean on up till we got into Honolulu. So when we got there, we was able to eat a little bit. But until then, we just couldn't do anything. We just work and drank coffee, more or less. We all stuck it out, and we made it all the way in.
By next morning, the crews of the engine and fire room were back below, patching up power and steam lines, building up speed to 6 knots, 10 knots, 14, and Big Ben cast off a tow line. The order of the day was a ship that won't be sunk, can't be sunk. Down below in the hangar deck, torn open to the sky, where a firestorm had in a flash killed every last man, the living now gathered to pray for the dead and give thanks for the miracle of their own survival. The final muster, 724 dead, 265 wounded. Chaplain Gatlin conducted the Protestant service. Father O'Callahan, as well as saying Mass, spoke the Hebrew words of the Jewish service for the dead. There was also a prayer for their commander-in-chief, President Franklin Roosevelt, who died while CV-13 was steaming home. A quarter of her crew left behind in the waters of the Pacific.